Good evening. Thank you all for being here. Tonight's Student Services Committee meeting. We'd like to call the meeting to order, and could we verify that the meeting has been properly posted?
Yes.
All right, thank you. This would be our opportunity for public comment. Did we have anyone sign up this evening?
Not tonight.
Okay. Let's move on then to our action items for the evening. Our first would be approval of student services minutes from the October 1st meeting. Mrs. Voigt.
I move to approve the minutes as presented from the October 1st meeting.
Thank you.
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Koenig. Any questions or discussion on the minutes? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All those opposed? It passes 4-0. Our next action item would be a discussion and possible action on our first board policy, which is 5610, suspension and expulsion.
Thank you, Mr. Zenobia.
Thank you, Mr. Pat.
This policy is revised to include optional language for the board to express preference for non-exclusionary discipline and is also updated to cross-reference the policy on discipline for students with disabilities. Consideration of these revisions is recommended.
Thank you. Would there be any comments or discussion on policy 5610? Okay, well, if not, I would be looking for a possible motion to pass the revised policy.
Motion to pass policy 5610 as revised.
All right, motion by Mr. Harlan. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Koenig. All those in favor? Say aye. Aye?
Aye.
All those opposed? This passes 4-0. Okay, so then we also have discussion and possible action on an updated policy, board policy 5610.03, which is alternatives to expulsion and reentry plans, which is a new policy. Mr. Pat.
Yes, thank you. This is a new policy. It's offered to address the common practice of providing students with an opportunity to avoid the expulsion hearing process in circumstances where administration determines it is appropriate to offer a reentry plan with conditions designed to correct the behavior. It's a voluntary process that requires the student and parent of the minor to agree to a set of conditions which, if adhered to, avoid the student's referral to the board for a possible expulsion. Consideration of this policy is recommended, but it's not required, nor is the policy necessary to allow for the use of such disciplinary alternatives to expulsion.
Okay, thank you. Does the committee have any discussion or comments? Ms. Voigt.
As you mentioned, a lot of these things are currently in place and as alternatives to the expulsion process. I'm very pleased to say that I have not had a lot of opportunities in my 4 years on the board to be involved in expulsion experiences. So I know that they're doing a good job of looking at some of the other alternatives in that context. I have a couple questions. As I'm looking at the reentry plan, under E, it talks about participation in a mentorship program. And just wondering what type of mentorship, who the mentors are in that pool of potential mentors.
Sure. Mr. Mark Lenner, our Director of Student Services, really runs all of the pre-expulsion meetings and has better insight for some of maybe the ideas and alternatives for discussion for that. So I'll let him answer that for Part E under the reentry plan, so some of the mentorship programs.
So specifically to the mentorship programs, we have not required mentorship programs in the past, but this would give us the option to do so. Oftentimes, discussion about part of the process is learning about the student, not only the behavior, but also sort of the precipitating factors, things that are going on in that student's life. And so having this policy on the books would allow us the opportunity to sort of tailor to their needs. That would be one such option. Oftentimes it could be something as simple as, working with their pastor in their church. It could be big brothers, big sisters. I mean, there's lots of various ways that we could look at this, but this would give us the opportunity to make that a requirement in order to participate in that and then earn reentry back into the school.
I was actually thinking Big Brother, Big Sister type of thing as a program that might be a good fit.
Yep.
The other is the participation in extracurricular activity. And I was wondering what extracurricular activity that would be referring to.
That is another piece that often comes up where, let's say, typically happens with a freshman student, ninth grade student, where they'll be in a pre-expulsion meeting for some reason. And one of the things that I will ask is, what are you involved in? And sadly, too often the answer is nothing. And the encouraging piece is to get them involved in something in order to, connect them to the school community, and also, I'll find it's often a protective factor that students are involved in things like athletics, clubs, activities, music, theater. It doesn't really matter what the thing is. It's the idea that they have something to lose as a result of any kind of a behavioral issue. And so this would give us the opportunity to encourage that they participate in something like that.
Good idea.
Any other questions or comments in regards to the policy this evening? A few things to jump in if there's a few more questions here. Having sat on several expulsion panels in the past, and going through some of these policies before, is it fair to say that we're doing quite a few of these things now, and the policy gives us some more latitude to do other things, or?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I mean, many of the items listed in this policy are already underway. For example, attend an alcohol or other drug class. And it says at the expense of the student and parent, which means that we could charge them. As of right now, we have a grant through DPI for AODA programming, and we use that grant to pay for that. That is, it's a powerful tool that we have, and a requirement that we have anytime there's a drug-related incident. We actually have two steps of the process. The first is called Prime for Life. That's the class. It's 3 class sessions after school, about 2.5 hours each. They're done by Elevator, community partner. We pay for that out of the grant. It's a tool for, helping to meet the parent and student halfway. They've made a mistake, but now, rather than just being punitive, we're also going to be supportive. If we have a student who we're seeing for a second time for the same type of offense, oftentimes drug use, we have what's called Teen Intervene. That is a 1-to-1 counseling, also provided through Elevate. It's 3 sessions. They encourage parental participation in the 3rd session in order to really understand what the student's needs are. If it's something that a student would need ongoing counseling, for example, we then use Care Solace, which is our referral service, our confidential referral service into care. And so in each of those steps along the way, there is a punitive piece, but there's also the supportive piece. And I think our families really appreciate that. They walk out of that meeting feeling like, yes, my student made a mistake and they're being punished as a result of it, but they're also being supported by the district. And I really do think that helps students and families to stay on track.
So another question would be, I know in a lot of cases our students that are going through this process sometimes are trying to finish out online. How does some of that affect what goes on here? I would assume it doesn't, but if they're not necessarily within the district, how are those things?
You're talking about students who are placed at eAchieve, for example? Yes.
Yes, thank you.
So that would be one option that we have available. It's a tool in our toolbox, often paired with other items. So for example, completion of Prime for Life would be a condition of return. Community service would be a condition of return. And we offer all sorts of different types of community service. And students and families are able to determine that on their own. Like I've had students work with their church. I've had students work with the Humane Society. I've had students work with Hebron House. We also give them opportunities for community service that don't necessarily require them to be out of the home. Because if the student's on eAchieve, for example, that might be writing letters to veterans at the VA clinic for the holidays. You know, just a simple letter that says, thank you for your service. You know, we appreciate you. Have a happy holiday, because oftentimes those are people who aren't getting a lot of mail. And so those are opportunities as well. So those steps in the process are facilitated through myself and Becky Kozak, who is our alternative service liaison. We work with those individual students to make sure that those conditions are met prior to any kind of restatement to a brick and mortar school.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? I know it's probably one of the hardest things to do as a board member is to sit on these panels and look at this, but I know there's also a lot of good ways that sometimes students are given a second chance where they can certainly work their way and get what they're here for, which is an education and a degree, so. So this is a discussion, possible action item. I don't know if there's enough concern to not go forward with this, but if not, we're looking for a possible motion to pass this policy. Ms. Voigt?
I move to approve the policy 5610.03, the alternatives to expulsion and reentry plans.
All right,
presented.
thank you. Do you have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Harlan. All right. All those in favor say aye.
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 Would pass 4-0. All right, we will then move on to our discussion information. Thank you, Mr. Lerner. Our discussion information item, which is the 23-24 school safety drills update.
Thank you, Mr. Zenobia. Wisconsin Statute 118.07 requires the administration to report to the board on the status of fire, weather, and emergency drills conducted during the prior school year, which you have as part of your packet. In addition to our safety drill logs for the 23-24 year, we also share, and I will be sharing here, a presentation on our standard response protocol used in the district. That standard response protocol, or SRP, is part of our emergency operations and crisis response plan. The protocol provides a response for our schools to use for critical incidents, to provide consistent, clear, shared language and actions among all students, staff, and first responders. In essence, the drills that we do, obviously, we follow SRP, so all that is tight and everybody knows what to do to be as safe as possible. I did share with you the standard response protocol packet as well. It's just 5 slides that I will also have up here. So when we talk about safety in our buildings, the first thing that is our biggest eyes and ears are our students. So Speak Up, Speak Out is something through the Department of Justice in the state of Wisconsin that is an app on all of our students' iPads that gets used frequently to have students privately report things that they're concerned about. And all of our principals with their student meetings and parent meetings are encouraged and were provided this slideshow, a much more robust one, but this information to make sure they're getting it out. So if you see something, say something. Want to encourage students to make sure they're keeping everyone else safe. Even the smallest things, let us know. And this is one way to do it, of course, a trusted adult, et cetera, but that is the message that comes out. And it's the same thing at home, right? You hear something at home, students are on social media, so we really want to make sure we're connecting with our students as they are our eyes and ears, and we want to set a good culture that way. Moving into standard response protocol. So the things that correspond really with the drill sheet that you are seeing are all right here. If you go to any one of our buildings, including right here at Blair, you will see these posted. So actually right over here by the door, you can see these same icons that all have meaning. So we did our safety meetings here, just like they were done at our schools that are done with staff and with students. So the things that we really focus on are a hold. Hold is something where if you have a medical emergency within the building, or you just want students to stay in classes, you can initiate that. Our Verkada system is new and a really great technology that allows us to do that at the touch of a button. It can also be done over the PA system, but it's really to make sure students aren't coming in the halls if we have something going on, most likely a medical emergency. Moving to secure, that's where something's happening on the outside, right? So you have business as usual in your building. Kids are moving from class to class, but nobody is leaving. In my experience in this district as a high school principal, we had some incidents in our community where we actually kept kids in, and we had a secure where nobody left the building. We provided lunch for everyone. We adjusted as we needed to keep them safe, and secure allows us to do that. Lockdown, this is where when something is dangerous inside your building, and this is something that we don't necessarily drill for hold and secure, but if you look at the drill log, we do drill for lockdown every school, first semester and second semester, at least twice. And so that's when there's an imminent threat in your building, and really that is something that we work a lot on as far as preparing for, because that's the biggest threat to our students immediately. We have evacuate, which is a fire drill is an evacuation, so oftentimes we have to do a fire alarm every month per state statute, so you can see all those drills are there as well. But we could also initiate and evacuate through the SRP protocol and Verkada and have our students leave that way. You might do that for a potential gas leak, gas smell. I've had that happen in my building as well as a high school principal. We had some Bunsen burner gas left on, and we had to evacuate. So that can be used there. And of course, a shelter is really a severe weather component, which we've also had to do. And everyone at these doors understands these icons, and then they always understand where they need to go and what to do. And that's why we have these drills to train, most specifically, the lockdown, the fire or evacuate, and shelter as well. So they have to have 2 emergency weather drills, one in spring and one in fall and spring. So just to let you know, some of the things where we go a little bit further with these safety drills, and encouraging our principals to trickle down into our buildings to make sure they teach and practice well. We have go kits in every classroom where we encourage our teachers are supposed to bring those kits. They have plans for, not plans, they have rosters for our students, current rosters, so everybody knows where everybody is, and we can communicate if we're missing someone in the case of an evacuation for a fire. And that's something that's very important. They also have tourniquets depending on what's happening, and communication components that are very helpful in the event of an emergency. So some of the encouragement from student services and from me was really the standard response protocol is one way, and it really revolves around locking down in the school classrooms, which is a very good thing to do, but it also allows some reality things to happen where if there's danger somewhere and you can flee and you can run, do it. Get out of the way of danger. So that's like a self-evacuate for students. Also using the paging systems and in your buildings to call out maybe where the person is, to maybe distract that individual if somebody's in your building in the case of a lockdown. And of course, all of our buildings are different, and we empower our leaders, our principals to adapt these things to their building. Some feel comfortable doing these things, others maybe not as much, and maybe they'll get there. But of course, we want to make sure they have options. Things like maybe adding a fire alarm to your lockdown, right? This is something where a lockdown always takes precedent over a fire alarm unless you're in danger from fire and have to leave, because there's the potential somebody's pulling that fire alarm to get people to pour out of classes. Again, empowering staff, encouraging actual classrooms to have some sort of a barricade plan. That's part of ALICE is just another acronym for a response system, different from SRP, and they really encourage some of the barricades of doors. We have teachers who have plans for that. They have bigger desks purposely up front, and they move those if they are in a lockdown. That's just another layer to help. Anyone can call a lockdown in any one of the buildings through the paging system. So we have large buildings, even our smaller buildings. On one end, something happens, any teacher can page and put the school into a lockdown, which is very important for time and safety. And everyone has keys for each classroom to be able to enter in as a staff member to a secure location with a key. And then the last thing that is kind of on here is considering a soft landing for some students who might have anxiety about it. I know that students have some who have anxiety or anxiety specifically about this, we will bring them up before the drills. One of the things is maybe we let that student know that in the next 3 days, we're going to have a drill, right? So they can start to learn and really be prepared with just a response and feel more safe in the purpose of the drill. So those are some of the things that we encourage our principals to do. Last thing that I have is another layer for the schools and safety is the CPTED. This is crime prevention through environmental design. It's really a checklist that principals at each building go through. They do that the first few weeks of school, and they do that with a school resource officer from our high school and their adopted school officer at the elementaries. They go through, they look at the inside and outside. We compile a list through that CPTED, and we have a safety committee that meets monthly where we take a look at things that we can do to make the building more safe and the grounds more safe. And if we can take the action, we'll do it. You can see on here, this is the most recent one. Might be as simple as a convex mirror in a hallway that helps out. It might be moving a camera. It might be cutting down bushes for a better view of something at a safety point. So those are the things we take a look at. What can we do or what can't we do that is maybe more of a financial burden we have to plan for. So those things are all happening in regards to safety and go along with your drill log as well. So let me know if there's any questions I can answer for you.
Sure. Any questions? Ms. Koenig?
Thanks, Ryan. I especially love the idea of the soft landing for students with anxiety. I'm sure that's very helpful, even if they know it's coming within the next day or two, that they're at least aware. I have a question regarding you mentioned something about the classroom hold and how at the touch of a button with Verkada, it can kind of be taken care of. For someone that's not in the building every day since the system's been implemented, what does that look like? Like how does that work within a school if there was a hold through Verkada? How is it instantly being able to be done?
Sure. So it's on all of our administrators' phones or their computer. So they would respond to a situation. Oftentimes, to give an example, it's a medical emergency within a hallway, or it could be a potentially disruptive student who is in the hallway where they want other students to stay in the classroom. It would be either done over the PA system, just we're in a hold. It can be voice, but through Verkada, you just press the button, and our schools, either through the phone system, depending on if they have upgraded clocks, which we're almost done with all of our schools, or in the areas or the schools where we have our upgraded system, the clocks will have just an electronic voice that will put the entire building into a hold. It'll announce it, call it out loud. It also scrolls it across, so you can see it. If you would be deaf or hard of hearing, you can see it visually. It blinks, and so that's how it would go. So it's an automated system that just push the button, don't have to worry about dialing a wrong number potentially or whatever else, and then everybody knows to stay in the hold. And then when you take out of the hold, it will say it's all clear. So it's just an automated system that has that happen.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Ms. Foyt?
Just this evening on the news, they were talking about the Speak Up, Speak Out with a potential shooting that was averted in southeastern Wisconsin today. And I think that program through the DOJ is a really important one. And I'm impressed to hear that it's actually on every student's iPad, that it's really readily available and very easy, confidential to be able to see something, say something.
Yeah, absolutely. It's nice that way to. We have some students who don't use it for that all the time, right? But the safety net for it is good. It's very good.
Do you have an idea of how often it's used? I mean, I know obviously when it's a big situation like what Ms. Voigt had said, you're going to hear about, averting a potential shooting or something tragic like that. But how often is it being used, and how long has it been in the district?
SUSO has been around for, I think, this might be year 3. Not for sure, but approximately 3 years. Up to this point this year, we've had about between 20 and 25 inquiries. So I guess on average, you're looking at one every few days, but based on the number of, it's primarily secondary schools, so high school and middle schools. And some of those, many of those are lower level concerns about students and their behavior, and it's just a way for somebody to get that out, which is great. They might not feel as comfortable comfortable, they might not know an adult, so then there'll be a follow-up accordingly, so.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Harlan?
So I think a lot of these skills are perfect for transferring into the workplace. I'm just wrapping up many similar drills at the workplace. For the students that are in high school, are we going up kind of above and beyond, or are there additional skills that they can learn? I mean, when you talk about the Go kits, I mean, do they have access to first aid or CPR or AD training that they can then take with them into the workplace?
For our students, they can get some of those skills through a PE class or through one of our health occupations classes, but it's not, we don't, besides PE or those areas, we don't have specific classes that have that happen. As far as experiencing or going through the lockdown, they are empowered through different things that they can do. So if they're caught in a certain area of the building, how can they protect themselves or protect others? So run, hide, fight is something that we instill in our students, right? Making good decisions. If you find that you can get out, do that and self-evacuate. If there's an imminent threat and you can find a place to hide because you can't get away or you can't run, then do that. If you have to fight, then you need to make sure you fight. So talking about how people that come into a place to do harm aren't expecting resistance. So how can you empower yourself to fight back if needed, to try to keep yourself safe and others safe? Of course, seeing something, saying something, and just really for the collective good, they're really reminded around, if you go to our schools, you can only really use one entry point, and that's a huge safety component. Our schools have hundreds of doors, making sure they're not opening doors for anyone else, even a friend. Just have them go around to the front. You never know what's going to happen or why. Ask the question, why are they there? And that's a good skill for anyone moving forward. So we empower them through the class meetings prior to running drills to think about all these safety things, go a little more in depth, barricading the classroom, making sure you're quiet and silent. And we put things in place to try to aid everyone to be more safe. Things that you can roll down over the windows, again, the barricades with the doors. We have windows in our classrooms that if you can open and get out, that's a possibility as well. That's always an option. So we've tried to expand to give them more knowledge to have more power over their decision-making to be as safe as possible.
Is that, you'd mentioned, don't open the door even for a friend. Is that process tested? I mean, I think of the mystery shopper type process. I mean, is that tested at the schools, that there's a stranger that it is trying to get in? And
It's not tested that I'm aware of for a random door for that to happen. It's actually a really good idea. I have to write that down on the list. How we do it is, for surely at the high school level right now, all doors are keyed into. So when we do a drill, no one is to open the door. You stay in the drill until somebody keys in and does it. So when we go to the doors, we'll ask for them to open the door as a test. So knock, knock, open the door, it's police, open the door. All of our teachers are trained to know that we have the keys to open the door, and if it's a situation, we're going to key in, identify ourselves, and then we're going to get you out. You stay there until we key in. So that is in place. But the actual random door, I like that, so we'll just see what we do.
I can share that even at times someone may get in, but it is often a really quick learning experience of kind of a team breakdown of what happened. You know, oftentimes it's someone subbing in for the person and they were in a hurry, you know, just let them in and that sort of thing. So since I've been here, it's happened very few times, but every time it does happen, it's a really good debrief and learning opportunity. And a lot of our schools have partner principals where they're called, like if the principal isn't right there or like on site, the partner principal is called immediately. So we have a lot of good practices in place if that were to go that far.
Ms. Foyt?
The whole door security is huge, you know, having been in the district for a long, long time. Doesn't Ricotta actually identify if a door's open, you know, being opened or propped open, et cetera, that there's like an alert to make sure to check that door?
It can. So there are certain doors that are automated or are electronic that you can badge into. So those doors have the means in the electricity to be censored. So it's not every door, but those doors it will give you an alert if it is open. So you can take a look at that through Verkada Command and know that. I don't know necessarily if if you look through the system, you will see it. It doesn't necessarily come as a text to anyone or anything to that effect. But if you are looking through your system, which in our schools, anyone who opens and closes doors sees that system, they can address it. So
What's in our Go Kids? Could you give us a little background there? It's been a while since we talked about those being available and kind of what they're there for and just generally.
sure, let me see very quickly if I can actually get the exact list. What I will tell you is they do have tourniquets that are in them. They have, here we go. They have a class list for students, so the roster has an evacuation component. They're going to have a card that's a yes or a no. So one of the other safety things that we are doing is that when you evacuate a building, getting into lines, getting out of the way, potentially a fire is coming in, and so you're in a place, in a line, and you can say, I have everybody here. So if somebody has a red that says no, that means we're missing a student. And so we use those cards for that, and then we can go and address it, get on the radios and say, oh, I have the student here in second grade because they were in the bathroom when we did A, B, C, or D. I believe there's a glow light that is in there as well, just in case the electricity goes out, there's at least some form of illumination. Here we go. There's a whistle, student rosters. There's a pen to make sure that you can write things down as needed, potentially date, time of if somebody starts to have a medical thing, et cetera. There is a checklist that has some emergency things for some references as needed. Of course, the student roster. So that's really all that is in there. Not that it's an all, but that's what's in there. And all of our buildings in the main office have a little bit more robust of a kit. So they have a first aid, they have a bin in the offices where they have a first aid, they have a reflective vest, the whistle, a bullhorn and batteries based on a power outage. There's obviously the emergency processes for evacuation of the building and reunification sites, pens, clipboards, et cetera, in case you have to write down or do any planning, anything to that effect. So those are the two layers that we have, the classroom Go Kits, and then every building has a Go Kit in the offices.
Does that office Go Kit have a AED, or I guess are there AEDs throughout the facilities as well?
There are AEDs in all of our facilities, and all of our buildings are very close. We might have one building left that are in the process of being MERT team certified, so medical emergency response teams, where they're individuals who want to be part of it, and they are trained in first aid, first responder. They're trained on the AED, and so in order to do that, you have to drill, and so our district nurses do a great job. They're the ones who will come to their pod buildings. They're responsible for specific buildings, run the drills with mannequins, delivering CPR. Everybody has a role with what they're doing, calling 911, assessing what's happening, and so those things happen at our buildings, and then all of our buildings have AEDs, and we have continued to add more AEDs throughout our buildings through grants, the Kyle Lermer Foundation. There's lots of fundraising that happens with great things because of the events that happen with our young adults and heart issues and things to that effect. So,
Well, it's certainly been a lot of conversation that we've had over the years. I recall the Go Kids were one thing I think that was added recently in the last couple of years, but just in light of the environment that we're in, I think we've been extremely proactive to make our students and staff stay safe, and it's been a really good job. I think the new system is assisting that somewhat, probably in a very good way. And we don't see it every day, but a lot goes into all this to keep drills going and kids feeling safe and knowing what to do in the case of. So appreciate all the effort there. It's a lot of work. A lot of work goes into it. So thank you for that. Are there any other comments or questions, or Ms. Foy?
I was very much interested in seeing the many pages of documentation of all the safety drills that are required in the district, to the tune of 18 during the course of the school year at Banting, just as a first sample. It seems like we have a lot of time spent in drill activities. And when this came up last year, I appreciate that Betty, went with the idea of, like, really, do we need to have a fire drill every month? Because it seems like that's the least of our concerns in terms of potential harm to children through a fire, compared to so many of these other things that, like you said, there should be at least each semester how to handle a lockdown, each semester in terms of how to handle weather, et cetera. And I can't help but think that there's a lot of unnecessary time on fire drills that, I think every school in the state of Wisconsin would agree that it's, we have a different era now than when that law went into effect, that I believe drills are necessary, but not necessarily the repetition of a fire drill that, doesn't really, isn't really needed as often as some of these others are in our current society.
Ms. Canning?
And I just want to add, too, that I had discussed this with Scott Allen this past summer. And unfortunately, because it is it's across the state, it would take a bill to be passed through the state legislature to change any of this that's already in place. And he did warn me that it would be a very lengthy and difficult process because you would need the majority of the schools to be on board. And, us being in a larger district like Waukesha, we have, a need for some of these other drills, where some school districts that are much further out and more remote, their main focus is a fire drill. They don't have the same kind of, concern for other types of, drills. So he did tell me, though, that would be something that would be extremely difficult and lengthy to try to reverse or change, just given the nature that it would be at the state level. So not that it couldn't be discussed, but it would be definitely something that we can try to visit and get a feel for how the rest of the state is feeling. When I approached him and talked with him, he didn't know if it was something that would be, want to be considered a friendly idea, because he said there would probably be quite a bit of resistance at the state level to making a change like this. So never say never, but.
Yeah, we can definitely continue to talk about what it looks like for the other drills. Additionally, I know that we used to only do one lockdown. Now we're doing one per semester. Something for our principal steering committee to maybe have a conversation around, would 2 per semester be okay? Would that be good? Would that be positive? Does that bring undue anxiety? At the same time, what does it look like when we do a drill? When I've drilled in schools, it's really good. The students are behind and do what they need to do because they're trained to do it and they're taught to do it. It's impressive how quickly buildings lock down. So that's a positive. So do we have the need for more potential anxiety if we do it more? Or what other challenges or things can you put forward? I know I mentioned some of those things in my presentation to maybe if you have another scenario, how can you respond to that differently, and what will kids do? Like I said, the biggest thing we did is we encouraged our kids to self-evacuate. So when we did that for the first time, we put police officers and staff out in vests to see how many kids poured out of the building, so we could catch them and say it's a drill, and then get them back in the building. Wasn't very many, but it was a few, so that's a positive. That's 5 decisions that were made that kids felt good about. So definitely something that we can bring up because we can drill as many times as we prefer when it comes to the lockdown or whatever else. So we'll continue that conversation.
Typically, what does a fire drill take, say, at a elementary school?
That's a great question. I don't know the elementaries yet. I'll have to get some information on that. I can tell you that at the high school level, about 1 minute and 30 seconds from the time the alarm is pulled to the time students start coming back in. So one of the things that we do with those is, based on what I talked about before, concerns around fire alarms, just walking into the hallway. It's our monthly fire alarm drill, having teachers pause and take their time to listen and talking with the fire marshal. You can do that. You can pause for 10 to 15 seconds and then evacuate to ensure there's not anything in the hallway, to make sure there's just not something off. And that is a practice that we encourage our teachers to do.
Ms. Foy?
I would think now, especially when, a fire drill could be something that somebody be pulled to try to get the people out, in a situation that could be dangerous, then it's almost like you need okay, this one's real, we do want you to evacuate. It's not a false alarm. It's not just inappropriate pulled situation. That I would think that the pause would be a real important piece of it, and not just automatically go because you're so conditioned that fire drill has to happen every month type of thing.
Yep.
Ms. Koenig?
I could just mention that on average, a fire drill from start to finish is 5 to 10 minutes for an elementary school, and probably closer to 10 to 15, like a school for example, like Butler, because we had so many students. You have 1,000 students going out and 1,000 students coming back, and by the time you get settled again, it could be 10 minutes, 12 minutes, but it's definitely a chunk of a period,
Sure.
See, the report that we have actually talks about 2 minutes and 5 seconds for the one in March. And then it might be, 2 minutes and 22 seconds when, in January when they want to try to grab something to be a little warmer going outside, et cetera. That the times do vary. But, as we talked about last year, the evacuation time, the minute and a half, if you're able to get that, it looks like in many of the cases it's a little more than that. At some of the, high schools, et cetera. It's not just the time to evacuate. It's take them outside, then get them back in, calm them down, figure out what you've missed in terms of your lesson plan that, has just been, upscuttled, and how to get everything back into the mode. Yeah, and especially, I think the littler they are, the more excitable they are about, the situation. So it's far more time that's invested in the evacuation experience than what's shown on the form. But that in itself, when you take a look at 9 pages of time that's spent on the drilling, it's a huge thing. It's a huge time factor within the schools.
I certainly remember elementary fire drills to this day. I don't have any data to support this. I do think, my children are still young, so as a dad, explaining to your kids what would happen if the house started on fire is one thing. I do think, as far as from an educational perspective, to especially get young children in a frame of mind what they should or shouldn't do in the case of an emergency, even a fire, I think probably saves lives all over the place, even though, and what I'm saying, I don't think a lot of parents really, we don't drill, hey, let's get out of the house, but they do it at school. And so it's the repetition, I think, that, when young children especially are faced with that situation, they're going to remember what's been beat into them repetitiously. And honestly, really the only place they get that repetition is from schools. I think a lot of fire departments would tell you that this is vital in saving lives, not just at school, which, let's face it, is true. We're probably never going to have a fire that's going to be threatening an entire class or school, but the education of it is, I think probably priceless in many cases. So I know it's time spent out of the class, but as a father, again, of young kids, I think I would be in support of keeping it the way it is. I know we have other issues that we have to drill for as well, but I do see that importance just, as part of going to school and being in the classroom. But Ms. Koenig.
Well, and to your point, Anthony, studies have shown that the body won't go where the mind hasn't been. And I don't know if you know what I mean by that, but when you practice something enough, it becomes like muscle memory, almost like automatic. So when something does happen, there's no confusion. You just get up and go because your body's been there in your mind so many times that when it is time to happen, it's just an automatic response. So like you said, even though there's quite a bit of time spent on it, the hope is that when it does in fact happen, if something were to happen, you would already be standing and going where you need to go because you've done it so many times. So it's an old phrase, the body won't go where the mind hasn't been. So
Sure. It's part of emergency training,
exactly.
so. Well, I don't know if there's any other comments or discussion on drills this evening. So then that would conclude our meeting, other than other business. Are there any recommendations for future meetings here at Student Services? Ms. Foy?
I was quite impressed to see the article that was in the October 31st Freeman about resources that are available for students experiencing homelessness. And I was wondering if that could be a topic that we could address as a student services perspective. Just I think it is, especially as we get into the colder winter weather months, just knowing, what options are available for our students to have
Okay, thank you.
temporary home concepts.
Any other suggestions? All right, well, that will conclude our meeting of the Student Services Committee this evening. We will be meeting again in December. I don't have a date in front of me, sorry. Here at 6 o'clock in the boardroom. Thank you very much.